is Sean Bohm. I'm the director of this seminar. Tonight, we are very pleased to have Ranju and Prawa as our guest speaker for this sponsored webinar, Improving Resilience with Rapid Attack, Remediation, and Cyber Risk Management. Just a quick update. Unfortunately, Rajesh, our initial speaker, had a medical emergency. Therefore, he's unable to join us. But Ranju, his counterpart, will take over for him. Okay, just a quick reminder. This webinar will be recorded. So let me do a quick intro about CISA. CISA is a forensic-driven global security company with 14 countries, including Bangalore, India, Texas, Irvine. They are a trusted organization across the globe for securing their business with robust preventive, detective, and corrective security services and solutions. Next slide, please, Ranju. So Ranju is just a quick intro for Ranju, his bio. Ranju is a core payment forensic investigator and handled many payment forensic investigation for banks, merchants, third-party processors. He held multiple certifications like CISA, CISSP, SANS, Certified Forensic Analyst. He also engaged multiple speaking forum. The noticeable one will be speaking at CXO Connect events in Baja. Our next speaker will be Prawa. He comes with various of experiences. He handled several information system audits, successfully implemented assessment programs at leading banks as well. He too was an authorized lead trainer for CISA CPISI, a payment security program for imparting knowledge on the payment security implementation. He also had engaging a numerous speaking engagement. So next slide, please. So just a quick reminder for the members of the chapter, this whole webinar will last for 60 minutes, 45 minutes, a sharing session from the guest speaker, 15 minutes for the Q&A. Do feel free to submit your question at any point of the webinar. The speakers are more than happy to take these questions. Please also be noted that all the attendees will be muted. Thank you. So, Ranju, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Thanks for the part. Sure. So, some of the so Prajwal, in case my gets disconnected or there's some date means, so that I can just rephrase the pointers in case if I get disconnected or there is some audio challenge.
All right,
sure. So just to get kick started, like Shaw mentioned, we are a payment forensic investigators. We carry out forensic investigations, especially with respect to the card breaches across the globe. We have done, say, in the last 1.5 years, due to pandemic, we have done more than 100+ forensic investigations, both payment related as well as non-payment related across the globe. So some of the data that we are presenting today are our learnings that we have learned while we doing the forensic investigations, and as we do the our MDR, that is managed detection and response service, what learnings and what kind of incidents that we have observed in our client environment, part of it. And then Prajal will take it over for the resilience part. Sure. So a quick trend on the cybersecurity trends. Uh, the first one is the ransomware attack. Uh, I'm sure that all of you know what a ransomware is. It's not completely new to you, uh, part of it. But there's been a different approach that we're observing in the last 6 months or in the last 2 years, basically. Because earlier the ransomware were just encrypting the data, while these days they are first completely assorting the data. It is transferring the crucial data out, and then start doing the encryption part of it, which has been a trend in the even before the pandemic. There has been a trend, but that trend was observed only for a few ransomware. But these days, most of the ransomware are doing that kind of a data transfer out and then start encryption. That's one. The recent investigation that we just carried out in the last month was for one of our clients in the UK region. Uh, they had 4 data centers, and one fine day, all their servers in all the 4 data centers just got encrypted by ransomware. They just brought down 3 of the data centers, and in one data center, they just reformatted, took the backup, that is the backup code and the database, took that backup and tried to go online. And within few seconds, that also got encrypted. What it means is that the intruder who was actually there in the network was there in the network for more than 2 years and had understood their entire functionality and had gone and injected these ransomwares into their code. So when they launched a particular attack, the client was forced to pay the ransom to get the infrastructure back online. So that's the sophistication of the ransomware attack that we have been observing uh, in the in the industry for all our for the forensic investigations that we carry it out. The next one is the supply chain attacks. Uh, I I don't think uh, I'm sure that all of you know the supply chain attack, and some of you might have been impacted by the supply chain attack as well, part of it. But if you actually, the reason why I'm putting this trends is that if you actually observe, these attacks didn't happen over a fortnight. Okay, it didn't happen within a day or a two. The intruder was there in their network, understanding their applications, understanding their code, and then injecting the malicious part of it. Whether it was the ransomware attacks that we are observing, or whether it's the supply chain attacks. One of the worst part that we have observed in the past 1.5 years, especially, is that the remote work has increased the attack surface big time, right? Earlier, when you used to say, when you used to go to the our clients for various PCI audits or various other infosec testing or other services, they always say that, hey, I have my firewall, I have my IPS, I have these NDR solutions and everything in place. I am secure. You don't need to give me a lot of other security controls to implement, or I do accept that this particular vulnerability may not be exploited. But right now, that has been taken out, right? All your users is outside your network. All the controls that you have implemented in your network has been ineffectively mitigated by the pandemic. And from the attacker perspective, they have the laptop, they have the users, which connects via insecure networks, via their home Wi-Fi, via their mobile phone networks, and you don't only have an antivirus or an EDR solution to protect it. But there are various methods in which the intruder are smart enough to override or evade those security solutions, and through your remote users network, able to penetrate the corporate network as well. This is a trend, and what we believe is that from an intruder perspective, they're just starting off, And over the next few quarters or 2 years, we do believe that the number of attacks is going to be increased substantially. Yes, like an iceberg, the number of attacker breaches that comes to the media is just 0.01% of the breaches out there. We ourselves know that of all the investigations that we do, only 1 or 2 cases goes to the media and all of us comes to know about it. There are a lot of breaches investigations that we do which never comes to the limelight or just get buried within the company itself. But it doesn't mean that attacks are not happening. The attacks are just keeps on happening. So the point we're noting here is that the attackers, and during our investigations, we do observe that the intruders or attackers are there in their network for a prolonged period of time, right? And coming back to some of the key cyber crimes that we have observed in Singapore. So definitely, these are the facts that we got from the various research papers that's been carried out across the globe, not just ours, but from multiple sources that we collected. So one is that 3/4 of banks and insurers have experienced a cybercrime in the since the pandemic began. But we do believe that it's not 74%; it will be 95% attacks. It might be that the banks or the insurers could not have detected that kind of an attack has happened in their network. 56% of FIS have seen a rise in financial losses associated to fraud or cybercrime in the last 12 months. We do have observed some of our clients shut down their businesses due to the attack part. And the client which I mentioned, we did investigation for the last month, had literally fired their entire InfoSec team and their IT head and got a new team to bring back their systems up. It's like 4 data centers being encrypted in a single day. Asia Pacific region accounts for 75% of the attacks that's been observed. Definitely, to think from an intruder perspective, for them, it's like Christmas with a lot of low-lying apples. We do believe that they are spoiled for choice, and like us, they might be prioritizing. We had a chance to interact with one of the actual intruder per se, and from his perspective, he says that when we just target one company and just go behind the same. And for us, currently there are a lot of low-lying apples, so it's that whichever comes to the picture, they just launch the attack per se. 60% of the organization experienced at least an increase in the cyber threats. 25% is a very small number. We do believe that there's a lot of cyber threats attacks being identified, because we do see the same during our MDR service. So there's been a huge number of increase in the attack part of it. Sure. And you definitely know the Singapore bank where a few of the cards has been leaked online, right? So this is few of the trends part of it. Now, what I would like to take before we just go ahead to a case study, a specific use case study. We would like to take a very quick poll and just get your understanding or get your opinion on what's biggest cybersecurity threat that you believe is for your organization. Sure. And in the meantime, I'll just answer one question. One of the questions that's been raised is that what must be the role of a regulatory body to minimize ransomware attack? Actually, a very good question per se. So, from a regulatory body perspective, definitely, like I'll take the example of what the RBI is doing here. That is the National Bank of India. They are basically coming out with advisories on forensic readiness audit, which is basically on how to get yourself ready in case you get breached, right? because most of the banks here in India doesn't know how to detect, to identify an incident, or they don't have a plan in place to respond to an incident part of it. So there is a new advisory, there's a new process that is launched by RBI. It's currently in the draft version, where they are saying that, hey, they may come and do a surprise audit on the banks to identify whether they are ready for any kind of incident part of it, whether they are doing proper monitoring, they are able to detect their security events, do they have a proper incident response plan in place, do they have a proper say forensics retainer agreements in place, etc. A part of it. Because from a ransomware attack, from a regulatory, they cannot say that, hey, you need to deploy this kind of commercial solution for stopping it. From them, they can only give a more a framework saying that, hey, using this particular set of framework, can you protect yourself? Is the one which they're pushing across. Sure. Thanks for the question, Bob. Now, coming back, we'll just quickly take you through one of the attacker response part of it, a small attack simulation, and we'll just explain on what steps you should take for a rapid incident response part. So in the past 1 year, exactly we can say, because in the month of July, we just updated our details. So the past of last 1 year, that is from last July 2020 to July 21. These are few of the current vulnerability trends that we are observing in our forensic investigations. One is that all the organizations have gone ahead and implemented multi-factor authentication, whether it is through a VPN access, it is through your mail access, or is it for accessing your servers. A multi-factor authentication solution has been implemented. But what we have observed is that those solutions are not being properly configured, which enables an intruder to do a lateral movement or connect to your network. So a typical example of a remote work is that you may connect over a VPN to your corporate network, and you may have, say, a certificate-based authentication. If that's the case, if I get a certificate and your credentials, then I'll be able to connect remotely. It may not be through a two-factor or out-of-band authentication via a mobile phone or any other factor part of it. And if you go to the server, they always believe that I have a PAM solution, that is a identity management solution, so that all users connect to that PAM and then come to the servers. But from an intruder perspective, if they compromise one server, they don't go through a PAM, they just connect server to server. And in that particular moment, there is no two-factor authentication in place, which leads to an easy lateral movement by the intruder person. Second, that we are observed in all the cases is an use of a custom malware, right? It's not that the same malware has been used. What we are observed is that they use a custom malware to evade your existing AV solutions part of it. Why this custom malware? Because the AV industry is definitely improving leaps and bounds. But in order to keep, or in order to evade the solutions, they develop this custom malware so that they can just jump past or evade your solutions. We do have seen that the EDR solutions say that, hey, I have identified a new DLL, I have identified a new executable which is not been whitelisted, right? I get an alert. But if your EDR solutions configuration is saying that, hey, even if it is not whitelisted, it can be executed. Instead of blocking that execution, then those malware will be able to execute part of it. So it all depends on how we're able to configure EDR solutions and part. But if you just say you only have an AV solution in place, then these custom malware are definitely able to evade those AV solutions. In the use case, I'll explain one of the malware, how it's able to take the data out. Improper access control, which is very, very common now, maybe due to pandemic, especially to the whatever account details is there in your test and UAT environment, the same credentials are available in the production as well, assigning high privilege for all the user accounts. And because most organization doesn't implement security solutions on the UAT or the test environment, the intruders first focus in breaching those test or UAT, and then from there learn from it and then attack your production network. It's a common trend that we have been observing. A storage of credentials, user credential in clear test. So what we have observed is that in almost more than 50% of the forensic case that we did, we basically will get a chance to image the IT admins or the production support laptops or desktops. And what we have seen is that definitely most of them will be having a file where they'll be recording all the usernames and passwords of their production systems. Whenever we do an interview with those IT admins, they say that every 30 days or every 90 days, the password, due to the AD and everything, the password has to be changed. And due to the password complexity, I cannot remember so much password. So they just keep a record of that password. And in some case, it will be a shared account. So in order to ensure that everyone has access, they just copy that password in a particular file. It's a common trend that we're observing. It's just not for 1 or 2 cases, but 50% of cases, wherever we got a chance to image a support system, desktop or a laptop, this has been the case. And in some cases, even the servers, we do have the distributed password. So what we always recommend to our clients is to run a data discovery scans across the environment. And instead of just scanning for PI data, maybe you can just use a keyword called pass or password to identify whether these files are getting captured or stored by your administrators and user systems. We cannot blame the IT team, because for them, if they forget the password, it's much more bigger escalation than storing it in clear test. The other one, definitely in the past 1 year that we have observed, is the misconfigured cloud environment. Due to pandemic, there's been a big shift to the cloud, but unfortunately, due to the lack of resource or due to the belief that cloud takes care of everything, when they shift to cloud, they have a lot of vulnerabilities being opened up there. It's not that it's been properly configured, and due to those misconfigurations, and can be accessed from anywhere, the intrusions that we've seen. These are the current vulnerability trend that were observed in the past 1 year. Other one is the use of genuine tools for malicious activity. So, like I mentioned earlier, the intruder basically penetrates first to your UAT test environments and maybe to your IT or support team laptops, understand their environment, what kind of application, what kind of software are you using for connecting. Are you using anything like AnyDesk or say Zoho Assist for connecting to a remote connection, and use similar solutions for those connections, so that even they're monitoring, they don't identify it that, okay, there's been a different solution being used for those connection part. Like in a case that we did investigation, we took around 3 months for just cracking the first clue in that investigation, because they had EDR in place and they were using AnyDesk, and the intruder was using AnyDesk only. So whenever we're saying that, hey guys, this remote solution has been used for this particular functionality, the client was coming back saying that, hey, that's been used for a genuine purpose, you can ignore it. And they had also solutions, but because they were using these same solutions as used by their IT team, it was not able to get detected. It was able to evade their existing solutions. And even in forensic part of it, it took us long time for us to identify that first clue, because the client was coming back and saying that, hey, these are tools used for a genuine activity part of it. The other is the unknown storage of sensitive data. We do have done investigations where the clients enable debug mode. The PI data, they believe that's encrypted, gets stored with the keys and other stuff. And the lack of logs for collection and monitoring. And definitely the unrestricted outbound internet access via proxy or whatever be the case. And most of the malwares, if there's an outbound connection, they can able to communicate out. So these are some of the trends that we are observed in the past 1 year for our forensic investigations part of it. Now, I'll just explain a very quick attack. This is basically for one of our intrusion that we are observed. This is a golden diagram that we basically use to explain all the use cases and part of it. This is standard one. We have DMZ, internal segment, critical segment, user segment, and everything here. So the first one was the intruder used the social engineering attack for compromising the user system. It's very easy because when we do our red teaming exercise and when we launch our phishing activity, all we need to do is just go to LinkedIn, do some few search here and there, and when we draft that email, we ensure that phishing email is being sent through their boss's email ID part of it. So if it is like I may send a mail, Prajwal may send a mail saying that a Prajwal @ instead of CC infosec mentioned SISA1 infosec.com. Right, it's a very similar one, and most cases the users doesn't identify that, hey, there's a phishing email coming in, and it's very easy to compromise the accounts. And when we do the phishing attack, we have almost an 80 to 85% of success ratio. So if the intruder wants to target, then definitely they'll have a much higher ratio part of it. It's not just a very random. I'm saying that it's a focused attack which can happen. Now, in this case, definitely it was through a phishing attempt. The first set of malware got downloaded. In that particular one, there was a keylogger. And the one thing which they did was that they disabled the antivirus running out here. Now, point to note here is that most of the malwares and everything do communicate back to the intruder part of it, whether it is a keylogger or any other activity, they do communicate back to the intruder part of it. Okay, that is what we call as the C2C or command and control server, right? Because every malware do communicate to command and control server, so that from an intruder perspective, they can give the command to the malware to say that, hey, what should be your next step of activities to perform part of it. Or that's one of the other ways in which they are able to control or penetrate to the network part of it. Now, unfortunately for the entity, the user just visited their office for some of the functionalities. We don't know the part, but they connected. He connected his laptop to the office network, and once it gets to the office network, the malware was able to spread to the servers part of it. Now, one of the pointers which everyone asks is that, hey, I have my protection carried out here. I have 2 firewalls, I have IPS, I have IDS, everything in place, right? Yes, I do agree that the AV got overwritten, or they were able to evade the antivirus. But I have other solutions in place. And how was that communication was going out to the command and control? Because the malware which was running in the user system was just a basic keylogger kind of a malware. And when they connected to the network, and the final malware which got executed was a total different malware. It was not the same malware. Now, during our investigations and our analysis, what we observed is that some of these servers do communicate to, say, a web server or a proxy server or a central backup server, and these servers do have a connection to the internet part of it via the proxy, or it's for getting the updates, whatever be the case. And in the firewall, it might be a specific IP part of it, but the firewall will definitely allow a DNS query out. That is a domain query out. That is the name resolution query, right? So if I'm just saying that, hey, let me access sysinfosec.com from this particular server, that's a DNS query. The first thing that goes out is a DNS query that, okay, please get me sysinfosec.com, do the resolution, I get an IP address. Now, once that query gets reverted back with that IP address, then the server try communication using that particular IP address. And when that happens, the firewall knows that, okay, this is an IP address, I should drop that particular packets. But it doesn't stops your DNS query out. And that's the exact port or the protocol which has been used by these malwares for communicating it out part of it. That is basically your DNS tunneling or your DNS query part of it. For both communication, because in your DNS tunnel and stuff, if you're able to understand DNS a little more in detail, there's a section for Node, and that's where the intruder is able to upload those data sets and communicate it out. And using the same DNS query itself, they're able to give the command back to the system. So it's not just one thing, there'll be multiple DNS queries up and running for getting that. I'm not going to detail, but if interested, maybe you can reach out to us and I can explain that complete attack flow. Not going detail because we have a lack of time. So this is a typical attack that's been observed. So the point which I'm putting it across is that even if you deploy your latest firewalls in place, you deployed your EDRs or AV solutions in place, the intruder still has mechanisms to evade your existing security solutions, right? But I'm not saying that you should not deploy EDR. You should deploy EDR. You should deploy the latest security solutions. But there are still chances for the intruder to evade your solutions in place. And that's the reason why we are suggesting the following methods for an incident response team to be created. The first one is please have a incident response team within your network or within your organization. This incident response team is not your SOC or SIM monitoring team. No, that team is just different team. Incident response team is a team who knows how to respond to a security incident. While the other team might be only able to detect an incident, this team should be knowing how to respond to a particular incident. The second one is for your solutions. You should ensure that you have a capability for detecting C2 communications, that is basically able to detect your DNS query logs, either by deploying a network security monitoring solutions, or if you're using your next-gen firewalls is able to give you the capture your DNS query logs part of it. This because this DNS logs is important to identify if there are any communication to a command and control server that might happen, and you may be able to detect and prevent it, because it is uses over the port 53, and in most cases in the live environment, the DNS ports are open because it will be required for your internal communication as well. For a server to server communication, it will happen on the DNS ports. So it will be open up. You cannot just block it because it's impact business. And intruder uses the same ports for getting the information outside your network part. Not for getting the initial ingress, but getting the data out of your network and communicating to a C2C. The third point is that even though you might have your solutions, we do ensure that you have a incident response tool deployed in your network, so that your IR team can able to take care of the incidents, like able to collect the triaging information, able to identify any indicator of compromise and hunt across the network for potential compromises, identify the scope and able to segment it, and also helps in recovering from an impacted systems. So an incident response tool is required because in most cases, what we are observed is that when a security incident happens, the IR team or the incident response team doesn't have the necessary tools or the expertise for identifying what all compromises happen in network and take action. Please note that there are multiple cases where when we go or when we do our monitoring, the client says that, hey, only this one system has been compromised, and we have either formatted it or blacklisted the IP in the firewalls and other stuff. But believe me, from an intruder part of it, the first step in any intruder takes is basically create multiple persistent connections across the environment, so that even if one of the connections gets identified and gets contained, they have another way to the network. So unless you're able to hunt across your network, identify all the indicators of compromise across your network, you are not containing it or you're not protecting your network properly. You're just reacting to that situation. It's like taking just a aspirin for a fever, which in later point of time may turn to be a COVID infection. You don't know. And do a detailed RCA if required, but at least have that IR in place. These are a few of the logs that needs to be required for a quick IR part of it. So what we call it as the these are the minimum set of logs which are required for an effective monitoring, with the first three as the most critical logs. That is your DNS, firewall, and domain control logs part of it. Anyway, when we share, we can share these details in part of it. But one of these steps that you can take is you can go back to your organizations and check with your infrastructure, check with your team whether these logs are being captured for an effective monitoring, because only if you're able to monitor these logs, you will be able to identify whether there is an incident or there's a breach within your environment. If not, you won't be able to identify, and which may lead to your organization name getting into papers saying that, hey, this kind of breaches has happened within your network. So with that, we'll have a poll too, and I'll hand over the sessions back to Brajwal. Brajwal, I'm stopping the share.
Sure, Ranju. Thank you. Ranju, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right. So yeah, I think we're good. We can end the poll. Yeah. Thank you very much. So hi, good evening, everybody. So thanks, Ranju. Thanks for this insightful, information which you've basically provided. It was indeed great. So let's quickly move into cyber risk management and a zero trust approach, right? This is something which is very important with the current pandemic coming to the picture as well. Risk assessment, risk management, and so on and so forth is very, very important as of today. So we understand the various aspects in terms of, your risk assessment, the process behind that, and also we'll talk about risk management. And then, last we'll talk about zero trust and cyber resilience. That's precisely how, we probably end the entire webinar per se. So moving forward, before we talk about risk management, what is important for us to understand right now is with respect to risk assessment itself, right? Again, having a decade of experience and performing audits, so on and so forth across the globe, people have this particular question, which precisely says, who should perform this particular assessment, right? From a risk assessment standpoint, who's responsible for this? Like, what are the XYZ parameters? Who should be a part of this particular risk assessment process? So please remember one particular aspect here, that when you're doing a risk assessment per se, you cannot have only a business-oriented risk assessment. You cannot have only a process-oriented risk assessment. No, you can't. It should basically be, include your technology as well as your processes. So that's precisely what we say. It should be business-centric and technology-specific, right? And apart from that, it should always include people, process, and technology. Okay, this is something which is very, very important. Now, also, most of you know about this particular standard, that is PCI DSS, and all of us are aware about this particular standard as well. And with the new version which is coming to the picture, that is version 4.0, which is releasing early March 2022. They're moving towards a risk-based approach, which means I will go ahead and implement a particular control only if there's a risk associated with it. If there's no risk in my particular organization, then what is the point of me implementing that particular control, right? So that's precisely why we need to understand the entire aspect. So who should perform your risk assessment? It should include people, process, and technology. And from a risk assessment standpoint, it should be business-centric and technology-specific. This is something which is very, very important for us to understand. All right. So moving forward to the next slide. See, if you look into any of the compliance standards across the world, nobody is going to communicate to you that you need to follow a particular framework, right, of risk assessment. It's up to you to follow what you want to do. But then we'll talk about something called as a hybrid approach in the next slide. And that is something that we would suggest from a risk assessment standpoint. But apart from that, we are talking about risk management. Now that we know risk assessment, how should risk assessment be performed, and who are the people associated with it, next we move to the risk management aspect. So when you're talking about the risk management aspect, what are the different parameters which has to be in place? First of all, network security, which is very, very important. Next, we talk about governance structure. Yes, you need to have an effective governance structure. You have to have a risk appetite, which means you have to do an assessment of your risk appetite. Now, according to your ISO 31000, what does risk appetite mean? It means the minimum amount of risk, a particular organization can accept or can basically take in. So you have to basically go ahead and perform a risk appetite, an assessment around that. What is that bare minimum risk that you can accept? Correct? So that is something which is very important. Apart from that, policies and procedures, very, very important, because that is something which is going to govern your entire information security. Incident management and proactive monitoring. Renju just spoke about these 2 pointers, and trust me, this is going to be the future, right? The only way that you can basically go ahead and prevent these breaches and so on and so forth is by having a good incident management system and proactive monitoring, right? So this is precisely, collectively, it talks about a cohesive risk management person. Now, having said that, I'm just moving to, the approach that we are talking about. Now, when we were basically talking to people across the globe and, doing our particular assessments in terms of, helping people to identify risks, they came up and, the only question that they came up with, everybody is aware about the ISO standard of risk assessment. But how about we using or incorporating the NIST in Octave? So if you ask me as a particular recommendation per se, what I would suggest is we will go ahead with an hybrid model, right? When I talk about a hybrid model of risk assessment, what is it going to include? It's going to be including all the 3 particular compliance standards per se, which is your ISO, which is your NIST, and your Octave. So everything together is something which is very, very important from doing a cybersecurity risk assessment, which is precisely a hybrid approach. So this is what we're talking about in terms of your approach that we should follow. Like I told you, right? We don't have a particular compliance standard. Like you talk about PCI, you talk about any of the compliance standards. They don't talk about a specific standard of risk assessment which has to be followed, right? So if you ask us, what we would basically comment or communicate is, let's go with a hybrid model so that you cover all the different parameters. so that you have your NIST incorporated, you have your Octave as well as your ISO standard. So that's precisely we talk from a hybrid approach time, right? So having said that, let's quickly get poll 3. So we'll just wait for this particular question, and then I will just look into the chat. So yeah, let's see if you've got any questions here. Okay, great. I don't see any questions, so we'll give another 30 seconds before people answer. All right. I think in the interest of time, we've just got barely 10 minutes left, so we can probably end the poll now. Thank you very much. So the next thing that I would like to discuss here on this particular forum is something called a zero trust. Now, this is something which is very, very important, right? Now, what does zero trust talk about, or what does zero trust tell you in a nutshell is nothing but it basically is a particular framework which has to be followed if you basically want to go ahead and stop a particular breach. Now, this particular zero trust, it was started way back in 2010, but people have started taking action and actually implementing this as of today, because this is one of the best methods in order to reduce, prevent, or stop a particular breach. Now, as the name itself suggests, what do you mean by zero trust? As the name suggests itself, zero trust is nothing but you do not trust anybody, be it an insider or be it an outsider, right? You precisely do not trust or do not give them access, to your particular network or system components. So it's a belief which is basically saying that an organization should not trust anybody, be it an insider or an outsider. So that's precisely what zero trust talks about. Now, zero trust precisely or typically is got 3 main principles that it operates on. These are very important principles. Now, what are these 3 principles it talks about is one is verify explicitly, which means it says any person who is basically coming in, be it an external or an internal person, before you grant access, you verify that particular access explicitly. That is point number 1. The second point it talks about is least privilege, right? Like we always talk about something called as role-based access. And if you have implemented PCI DSS or any other controls or any other standards per se, we talk about something called as role-based access, right? If I basically need that particular access, you give me an access. If I'm an administrator, I am bound to be an administrator. If I am a normal user, I do not need admin privileges. Because what Ranju was also explaining over a period of time during our particular breaches and during our investigation as well, what we've identified is a lot of internal people are themselves exploiting the particular network, right? Why? Because of maximum privilege. They're not operating with this particular mechanism of least privilege. So there is something called as just in time and just enough access. So that is something which is very, very important, and that has to be practiced across. And this is the second principle of zero trust. The last principle is we have to basically go ahead and assume breaches, which means how will I basically go ahead and protect? And that is what Ranju was talking about, identifying your encryption solutions, you're having your EDRs in place, making sure your antivirus is updated, not using end-of-life systems, or making sure that your entire ecosystem per se is updated with the latest patches and so on and so forth. Because ideally speaking, anything which is exposed, and if in case your systems are not, say the vulnerabilities which is identified and so on and so forth, they're not mitigated and the patches are not updated, and you can obviously compromise this particular environment. So that is what are the 3 principles. Zero trust is something which is very important. I'm just going to highlight the principles again. It works on 3 main principles. One is verify explicitly. Second one is least privilege, and third one is assume breaches, right? So this is something that zero trust works on. Now, moving forward, what are the different ways of the implementation in terms of zero trust? Like I told you, is effective identity and access management system. Like this is something which is very, very important. That's what even in the previous slides we're talking about privilege identity management, right? A PIM solution which is coming in place, something which is very important. Controlling user authentication. When I talk about user authentication, people having access to, right? I told you you need to limit the access. It should be a role-based access. So this is something which is very important. Proper credential evaluating mechanisms, making trust determination, enforce the particular concept of least privilege, which is very, very important. secure the administrative rights. Like I told you, right? You can't give everybody administrative access. You have to basically make sure a person with a normal privilege is not doing administrative functions per se. Then leveraging adaptive access control, updating your training mechanisms. A very, very important point right now is training, because all of us are working remotely and we cannot actually have a conversation face to face. Now, what is very important at this point in time in this current scenario is how we basically go ahead and enforce training. So that we spoke about phishing, which is the best way in which hackers are exploiting systems today. How many of us actually, before going ahead and responding to a particular email, look into the participants, right? The moment I see a particular email coming in, I just go ahead and click a reply to all. So that is something which shouldn't be done. I will have to go ahead and verify these particular recipients whom I'm sending this particular email to, or look into my particular inbox to identify whether I'm getting these particular emails from a legitimate source. Second one, important point, you do not download anything which is not coming from a legitimate source. You do not click on links, so on and so forth. So how all of this can be enforced is a part of awareness training, because this becomes very, very important, right? The next thing which we talk about is in terms of our cyber resilience. Now, this is something which is again very, very important because cybersecurity and cyber resilience are two different pointers which we need to keep in mind, right? Because a lot of people come, when we basically have our conversations across as well, a lot of people come back to us and say, cybersecurity and cyber resilience are something likewise or similar. No, it's not. Cyber resilience is how you basically make sure your objective is being met. Even though you are compromised or your systems are compromised, you're able to perform your day-to-day functions, right? So that is where cyber resilience comes into the picture. Now, what do you mean by cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is how do you protect against any threats which is related to cybercrime. So that is your cybersecurity aspect of it. So if you look into the entire concept now, cyber resilience becomes very important because given the current situation of the pandemic, that is what we mentioned in the remember section as well. The chances that you have to deal with the cyber attack are steadily increasing. Trust me, while we are having this particular session, we don't know what the hackers are exploiting, right? They can bring down websites, they can bring websites down just in a matter of seconds. Like what Ranju was saying, 4 data centers, they were able to just exploit it, encrypt that particular information, right? So it's very important for us from a cyber resilience standpoint that how we basically make sure that the end objective is being met, even though we are basically compromised, and make sure that we have particular plans in place so that we can identify the particular intruder even before things get exploited. Correct? So that is something which is very, very important. So we talk about effective or intelligent monitoring, which is very, very important, like we spoke about in the previous slide as well. So this cyber resilience is a 4-step process where it talks about evaluate, improve, develop, and re-evaluate. As simple as that. So first of all, you evaluate your current, I told you, right, your risk appetite or per se, or what is your current cybersecurity posture. So you evaluate that. Now, how can you evaluate this process? You either perform internal audits or you get, people who are actually, say, certified on XYZ domains to actually assess your particular environment infrastructure so that you can evaluate where you stand. Once you evaluate, you improve, okay? And then you develop certain policies. And once you've done all of them, you re-evaluate. So this becomes a loop. So what I would suggest, and I would like to end this particular webinar with this point, that let's not just stick to compliances, right? Compliances, a lot of them will, a lot of standards come into the picture and they provide these particular compliances, yes. But can we talk about security and not just compliance, right? So that is something which is very, very important. Trust me, if you basically take security above compliance, our environments are going to be safe and secure and we will not undergo a particular breach. So that is something that I can basically, preach, because this is what I communicate to people, is not just from a compliance standpoint, but let's take security that is way above compliance and implement the same. So on that note, I would like to end this particular webinar. And I'm just going to quickly show you this particular slide, which talks about our services which we provide from CISA's perspective, in terms of our compliance, in terms of testing, in terms of resilience, in terms of data protection and training. So this is what we have from CISA's perspective. These are the services and our products and what we do in terms of our cybersecurity space as well. So any question and answers, I think we have a minute left. So anybody who's basically got your questions, you can just put it in the chat and we'll be more than happy to answer. If in case you want to reach out to us, you can do that as well. And you need any information, we'll be happy to share. So yeah. So Sean, off to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. A special thanks to Renju and Prawa for the great presentation and sharing. While we're still waiting to see whether any more burning questions from the members of the chapter, I would like to say a huge thank you to all the members for joining us tonight, and I hope you really enjoy it. So we truly appreciate everybody being here. So we will take would like to take a minute or two for the members to join to actually participate in our survey. So members of the chapter, you can scan the QR code for the survey itself.
So Sean, I have a question which has come in. People are asking if we can share this particular presentation. I think that is something that is doable, right? You will be sharing this presentation across, yeah?
Yes, definitely. Pawan, we will definitely share the presentation to the members in time to come, probably a couple of days.
Sure. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if there's isn't any more questions from the member of the public, member of the chapters, then we probably will end the webinar for tonight. So once again, I'd like to thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you in the next webinar. Good night. Thank you, Renju and Pawan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Stay safe and take care. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.